Whether you are starting the league late, console launch is just happening for you, or if your league start build didn't get off to the best start. I tend to like to do a video roughly a little bit before a weekend talking about what ended up being meta. And while the same faces are popping up, quite a few things have changed. GGG has finally managed to shift the early league start meta relatively substantially, for better or for worse. So I'm going to talk about all of the different builds that ended up being popular, why they ended up being popular, and hopefully give you an idea of whether you should swap, stick with what you're doing, or consider something completely different. Now, if you're new to the channel, make sure that you subscribe, and without further ado, let's get into it. So with these videos, I always like to go off of the PoE Ninja data. If you don't know what this is PoE.ninja, the website that basically catalogs what all of the top players in Path of Exile are doing. You can sort it by day and sort it by ascendancy and all kinds of good stuff. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. Deadeye, particularly Bow Deadeye, has absolutely taken over as the #1 slot, without a doubt. Now, if we go and take a look back at last league and Ancestor, I do think that Deadeye was probably still at the top at the end of week 1, but I don't think it was as aggressive. Yeah, so it was 17%. This is going to be a lot of the same stuff, but this is vast majority Lightning Arrow and some Tornado Shot, right? However, when we go back and look from 17 and 9, with Inquisitor being behind at 9, we go back to Affliction League, the Deadeye is now at 24%. And when you jump this up to like level 90, it's 25%. You go up to like 93, it's 26%. A massive portion of people are playing bow builds. Now, why particularly are people playing Deadeyes so much more than before? Well, you can see right here why. If we looked at last league around this time, you saw that it was way more people playing Lightning Arrow and only a few people playing Tornado Shot. The big thing is, and this is coming from someone who played Lightning Arrow into Tornado Shot having the Helmet Enchant built into the gem itself is absolutely massive. Previously, to get a Tornado Shot and Helmet Enchant, it would be like multiple divines. We're talking like 10 to 15 a lot of the time, especially early on in the league. Now that that is just simply available, the path for people going from bow build, whatever they want to start, into Lightning Arrow, into Tornado Shot is super smooth. You only need, I would say, maybe 2 divines worth of gear to be able to swap into Tornado Shot at this point and have it be absolutely fine. There have been some moving around of a few pieces on the bow build, but the community has essentially overcome it. You can still get full berserk, you can still get all kinds of good stuff on the bow builds. They're as fast as ever. Tornado Shot has the lowest barrier to entry it's probably ever had at this point, and you can absolutely zoom through and destroy maps. And with Tornado Shot being available, you can do some pretty good single target as well. It's not as good as, say, you know, like a preload Trapper build, but you can get those map bosses and you can get those slightly harder rares down quite a bit easier with Tornado Shot than you ever could with Lightning Arrow. So the one takeaway that I would say from the entirety of this is that if you want to play a bow build and have like an early league start farming monster, this is probably the time to do it, because I think bow builds are getting to be such a large portion of the early meta that I think we might see some targeted nerfs next league. So play it now. It's very, very powerful. I've been doing it myself. Heavy recommend on the Lightning Arrow and Tornado Shot build. I'll probably do an update video on what I've been doing, because there's new like mirror arrow shenanigans that have been going around. Probably do an update video on that tomorrow sometime. However, let's keep going down the list. Now, Pathfinder has gotten a pretty big surge as well here, with people playing Scourge Arrow and Toxic Rain, as well as Caustic Arrow of Poison. One of the big reasons for that is that this tincture right here, the Poison Berry tincture, where it says all damage can poison, has made poison type bow builds just absurdly approachable. One of the biggest reasons why elemental bow like Lightning Arrow, Tornado Shot, and all of that have been so prevalent early in leagues is because those elemental damage bows are just so straightforward to craft, and they provide so much power with just a couple of prefixes. Now that people can grab these Poison Berry tinctures and have all of that elemental damage poison, you've got this huge base of damage that you can use for poison, which, albeit I think is better on an elemental bow build, but having this big base of damage for poison is pretty insane, to be honest with you, and this has made it way easier to be able to do that. So you have a lot of people playing the new Scourge Arrow of Menace. This is the one where you don't have to worry about like the channeling or anything like that. Bunch of people playing Toxic Rain, Caustic Arrow of Poison. It makes pretty good sense. Below that, you do have some people playing Blade Vortex and Ethereal Knives. However, there was a bug with normal ethereal knives. I don't even know if this has been fixed now or if it even is a bug, where the new base ethereal knives didn't work with returning projectiles, so that was a little rough and kind of unfortunate for anybody who started that, but these builds are fine as well. However, the big boy when it comes to Pathfinder and poison builds is really going to be these bow builds using elemental base bows. Next up on the list is the Guardian. This is not a surprise to me, and I don't think it should be a surprise to pretty much anybody else, that Summon Raging Spirits ended up being pretty insane. Now you'll notice that not a lot of people are using the Summon Raging Spirit of Enormity. I know a lot of people got like really hyped that, you know, they're gonna have these big giant raging spirits that crit all the time. This, in my opinion, while someone might find a way to have this work super well for like a attack base, I think this is minion instability, and minion instability is a completely separate build, not something that I think that you should really be worrying about. The normal summon raging spirits, where you just summon 20 of them and they just go out and do the damage, is very strong, can do most content in the game if you decide to scale it up enough, and is probably one of the smoothest experiences through the early game. There have been some people using some of the new specters. A lot of those new specters are pretty crazy. I personally don't like specters and I don't think that they're necessary, but if you can handle the headache of specters, there's like specters that just give you free auras that like do exposure and all kinds of crazy stuff. So there's a lot of cool stuff going on with the Guardian as well as SRS. And of course, I do have a guide for Guardian SRS if you're interested in having a like handheld step-by-step league guide, so you can find that on my channel. Next is going to be Elementalist, and this is pretty classic. Detonate Dead and Explosive Arrow have kind of been staples essentially forever now. There is one kind of new build that's making some waves here with the Vaal Flameblast. I talked about this in my top 5 video, a video by Jungrown talking about how good of a build this is. Slightly clunky. I do agree that it's a very good build, but it's very hard to beat Detonate Dead. It's just a very consistent build where your damage is just kind of built into the mechanics of the skill. You don't really need to worry about that, so you can focus on getting a lot of defenses, as well as Explosive Arrow. It's not a build that I really like, but it is super strong. Obviously, a very good build. It's been very good for a long time. So this is pretty standard. Not much has changed really with the Elementalist besides this this Flameblast build, this Vaal Flameblast build that uses Wave of Conviction as well. It's kind of like a take on like the Wave of Conviction Ignite build, but Vaal Flameblast is absolutely a very good addition. Now, here we've got a pretty big change. I talked about this a little bit, but the champion has actually become pretty insanely popular, and it's not because of Corrupting Fever. Corrupting Fever has always been good. If you followed the Rue build for it, he keeps it pretty updated. Always been a really good league start. Splitting Steel, however, has taken the top ranking here. Splitting Steel, you might know from like my old builds from before. Rue has got a new POB for it that uses a bunch of very cheap gear, no crit or anything like that. Very powerful POBs, very good. Splitting Steel has gotten a big glow up in recent time, and the new Splitting Steel, the base ability for it doesn't require steel shards anymore. So I do think that the champion is getting some love finally. Splitting Steel is getting some love finally. It's a very solid build, very powerful, very good. Excellent for league start. There's lots of new crazy charms that are super expensive but very good for this build. I'm happy to see the champion and particularly steel skills getting some love. Now, of course, Corrupting Fever is also good. It always has been. Explosive Arrow on here, more of a hardcore build. I think that you should probably be playing an Elementalist on softcore if we're going to be real. But beyond that, champion, a relatively good choice. Now, below that is Necromancer. This is mainly for Summon Raging Spirits. I personally feel that the Necromancer version of Summon Raging Spirits is just simply worse than all of the other ones. I think in order of power, it probably goes Lightning SRS Champion, which is a very high-end build. Probably shouldn't league start that. Guardian is extremely powerful. Poison Summon Raging Spirits is kind of a little bit behind in this regard, but a lot of people still like it. A lot of people enjoy it, so they're playing that. And what I want to say is probably the biggest change when it comes to, when I said for better or for worse, you might notice Inquisitor and Slayer, as well as Juggernaut, these are all really low now. Juggernaut being below Hierophant early on is pretty rough, if I'm going to be honest with you, because a lot of people were playing Bone Shatter. Inquisitor and the Righteous Fire changes have made Righteous Fire not that great early on, if I'm going to be honest with you. I think that it probably got buffed in the late game, and like the middle to late game still seems to be pretty good. But the early Righteous Fire stuff scared off a lot of people. It's very obvious that that's the case. And then we got this new Storm brand of Indecision going here. There's a couple interesting things going on with like this Penance brand and the Storm brand alt qualities that are pretty insane. Like, I don't know if it's dissipation particularly because I haven't looked real deep into it, but one of the new penance brands is like absolutely nuts at killing bosses. Probably worry about that here in a week or so when I have time to look into it, but there are a couple interesting Inquisitor builds that aren't Righteous Fire going in. And then of course we have Slayer, which has essentially taken over for Bone Shatter. I think that most likely from here on out, you're probably just going to play Slayer going forward for this. The high end of the jug got nerfed pretty hard with the changes to Ashes and the changes to there not being like an alt quality that gives you attack speed per trauma. Kind of makes it so that the jug really isn't that useful anymore for Bone Shatter. So I think if you are going to be playing Bone Shatter, it's probably Slayer, and I'd probably just follow whatever Karn is doing. Beyond that, we're getting into like the 3% and lower. There are a couple of decent builds here, a couple interesting things going on. Realistically, I really would have liked to see the Gladiator get some kind of changes here. The Gladiator really is just super underrepresented, and the Assassin as well kind of looks like it needs some help. It does feel like a lot of the charms are exacerbating this problem here because you can get a lot of the effects that are unique to these ascendancies on these better ascendancies in general that are much more meta, but it is what it is. That's just kind of the way the Path of Exile works. So hopefully this video explained how the meta kind of developed a little bit here, why people are playing the things that they're playing, and what are the strengths of those different things, and maybe can give you an idea of something that you want to play. If there's been this build, like maybe Splitting Steel is something you've been wanting to play for a really long time, well, now's the time to do it because you don't have to have all the difficulty with reloading your Splitting Steel anymore. Or if you've put off playing, you know, like one of those poison bow type builds for a long time and kind of want to pick it back up, with these tinctures and everything being able to poison so easily, seems like a really good time to do something like that. And of course, bow builds are better than they've basically ever been. It's Bow League once again, so if you're gonna play bow builds, probably do it now, because I could foresee them getting some nerfs sometime soon. So remember, boys, if you enjoy this content, make sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest videos, and stay safe out there in raid class. And I'll see you guys in the next video.